Hey, everybody. My name is Bill Blackburn, Obi-Wan, and I am going to continue a discussion that I've been doing on Mandalorian armor for new people. Uh, I need to preference, I am not a Rusalor, I'm not a Verilor, I have no title, no authority, I'm not a important person in the world of the Mandalorian merc. So if you're trying to get official approval, authorization, information, I'm not the guy. Okay, talk to your local people and do that. And Rob even is on here. He is a Rusalor, and so he can correct me when I'm wrong. And please feel free to share this. I might take a minute here and just try to paste a couple links. Feel free, chime in, tell me where you guys are at. I'm in Elkhart, Indiana. Okie dokie. All right, this is Bill. I will be back on in just a second here. So let me find my phone. Okie dokie. So, Rob, very glad to have you here. And I love that you're here as somebody who has helped me with my build and talking because I am working on brigades as well. So, we're going to kind of sort of kick off again. And I highly encourage that folks just hop on, ask questions, post comments. And I mean, come on, we're quarantined, right? Where am I going to go? So, what I will probably say is that it is likely that I can do live videos after I'm done with work. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm pretty much self quarantined. I don't have an issue myself, but this is a way of keeping me busy. I normally coach robotics 3 to 4 to 5 nights a week, all day Saturdays. Maybe I'm starting to go a little stir crazy. And so this is a great opportunity to just share and break the monotony of a little bit of self isolation. So I'm checking a couple messages on Facebook, and I will be right back with everybody. And actually, if Rob, maybe if you can post it up for me just to say that here's the link, and then I can just keep talking. I'd appreciate it if you could do that. I see that we got 4 people online. Very glad to have you all wherever you are. I know Rob's back there in the Colorado area. Again, I am in Elkhart, Indiana, 30 minutes east of 30 minutes east of Notre Dame and South Bend. So that's where I'm at. So night work. Working on your first kit. Do not like exposed metal, like painted mine, then weather it so it looks dirty and grim. Absolutely. Hey, Tuscan, New Jersey. Glad to have you guys here. So here's the thing about Mandalorians. And this is something just to keep in mind, and this is the beauty of it. It's your kit. As long as you do what they talk about within the CRLs and the costume standards, and you fit within their rules, go with it. If you like exposed metal, go with it. If you don't want exposed metal, don't go with it. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's your kit. And that's what really made me love the Mandalorians, as opposed to the other costuming groups, which I've done plenty of kits. Rebel Legion 501st, like 18 approved kits between the two of them. And so I did this because it lets me do something that fits my personality, my interests, And it can be a constantly evolving kit. Your kit is never the same. And so, yeah, thank you, Rob, for sharing it across the groups. And so, Mandalorian, follow the costume standard first and foremost, okay? Please, for the love of God, follow that costume standard to a T. I was talking about on the other stuff, other boards, but on those sliding glass doors behind here, I used dry erase board and I wrote down every single part of the costume standard, and then I crossed them out as I got to them. And it gave me that ability to constantly look at it, ruminate on it, think about it, and then make it better. So checking one other message, 1 second. All righty, plugging away. I'm going to close down Facebook so I don't keep getting distracted there. And here we are, continuing on. Okay. So grab that costume standard, look at it, think about it. I'll just try to maybe a quick recap from what I was saying on the Mandalorian costuming or Mandalorian mercs costume group. Start with your soft goods first, especially your vest. Your vest is probably, that is the foundation that everything is built on. Okay? That foundation, that vest, your plate placement is so insanely critical, and probably, you know, Rob can tell me if he knows statistics, but it seems like virtually if you're going to get denied on your first application, it's going to be because of plate placement, stuff like this. You see how my Ironheart's too close to that. And, you know, if you want something that they're going to ding you on or that you will get dinged on, it's the placement of this stuff is where the vast majority of my problems were. Between that and baggy clothing, those are the things, if you want to see like the most common things that I got hit on in approval, that's it. That said, soft goods. But if you're going to buy a helmet, and you're buying it from a vendor, order it, and that way you know that it's going to hit and show up in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, however long it takes for them to do. Okay. And Rob is right. Use the pre-app process, and you want consistency among your parts, your weathering in your kit. Okay. So I'll give you an example here. Okay. I have a very heavily weathered batch of armor right here. I've got mud, I've got dings, I've got scratches, I've got black wash. So if I'm going to have that on the armor, guess what? You need to have this on your soft goods. Soft goods have to be weathered. Okay. I'm just going to make the OCD Bruce wig out and put that on like that. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. This was a little fun thing that I did with the found part. I believe this was off of a speaker, okay? And I simply grabbed it and put it on as a layer. I don't have a particularly in-universe reason other than something called the rule of cool. And I did it because it looks cool. And, you know, maybe you could claim, you know, that it disperses EMP blast or whatever crap you want to make up. But, hey, I like it. Other mental note, this sigil right here is my clan. So if you're new, you can't put this on your kit until you're approved. Same thing goes if you're working on brigades. You can't put that brigade sigil on your kit until you're approved. Just FYI. And there are brand new rules and all that type of stuff going on with the new revisions. And so CRLs have changed. Costume standards, please forgive me if I use the wrong term. I've done so many kits in different groups. I always get the terms wrong. Okay. Don't put this on until you're approved. But to give you an idea of how I did it, I grabbed a handy dandy patch that I just happened to have. Okay. And I believe I photocopied it. And then I took that photocopy and I traced it out and I just cut out a stencil on paper and X-Acto knifed it and put it on there. And I think, but there you go. That's sort of how I did that. And Tubby Tuscan, I'm talking about clan sigils. So this sigil here, sigil, whatever, sigil is my Takure clan. You can't put this on your kit until you're approved in that clan. If I move back to Colorado, more than likely I'd have to swap this out on my kit, and then when I get approved in Sarar clan, then I would swap out that sigil with that. I don't know if you can have sigils from multiple clans. So there you go. Yep, Rob's chiming in on that. And so just know that the sigil list, there's a whole bunch of stuff with that. But this is just kind of fun. So I could even keep the Takure if I moved. I love to hear that. Not that I'm planning on it. Sorry, I'd love to go back to Colorado. Can't afford it. So let's talk basic tools, cutting your plastic, where to get your plastic, okay? On most or a lot of the clan message boards on the Mandalorian Mercs forums, you're going to see a thread that says that you places to get Sintra. Okay, Sintra is the go-to in the Mandalorian Mercs costuming group right now. Okay, I've used ABS. I love ABS. There's a time and a place for ABS, and there's a time and a place for Sintra. Okay, and so I have used 3 mil, 6 mil. 3 mil is great, super duper flexible. I can do stuff with this, can do with this. Okay, I'm a bigger guy. I'm 280 pounds. This looks more proportional on my body than this. My 17-year-old, my 16-year-old are getting armor in 3 mil. Okay. If you're going to cut 3 mil, score and snap is a beautiful way. Light cuts with a sharp X-Acto knife and a straight edge. Okay. Do not, for the love of God, push hard in there because you will donate blood to the armor gods. Guarantee it. Okay. Light cuts, get it done, and then sort of bend it back and forth, and you can keep cutting in there. And that is how you score and snap it to get a nice break. Okay. That did not work on this. I first tried using, after that, I went with the old Dremel tool. Okay. Dremel tools I found walked a little bit. It sort of would walk across the plastic at times. Great tool, not my favorite. Okay. This Harbor Freight tool is my new favorite. Okay. This little doohickey right there just ate through that plastic like it was butter. Okay. Yeah, Rob, you can cut 6 mil with a box cutter. It takes a lot of passes. I don't have that kind of patience. I'm too impatient. Okay. This, I did in about 2 hours what would have been an entire day's worth of stuff with all of the plates that I did. And so your mileage may vary, but this to me was worth its weight in, it was worth the investment. When I got the stuff done with that, then what I did is I hit it with the detail sander with about a 60 grit, and I just hit those edges just to kind of soften them up a little bit. But because of the way that I weather things, I did not worry about perfection. If you're OCD, find a different person. I go for a very destroyed and damaged armor look. I don't do pristine. I try to make it look like my guy has worked for a living. And so I didn't spend a lot of time polishing up those edges because I actually took, if you see it here, I'm the only guy you probably know that has a concrete cinder block in their office. And I was rubbing plastic along this, and I took a hunk of this and I would rub this along those edges to get those scratches and those dings and those nicks. And I'm a very firm believer in using organic and random items to make weathering as opposed to standardized things. And I think I've got the tool over here. Here in one of my shelves, I've got a wire brush. Here it is, standard issue wire brush. I won't use something like this for making those scratches in the plastic because this is too uniform. I'll take a broken piece of rock and do that because I love the organic nature of this as opposed to just common and uniformity. So those kind of tools. The other thing is I don't have a belt sander at home. Okay, this was a beautiful, cheap investment at Harbor Freight. And I love all these tools because I can take these when we're out of quarantine. I can take this stuff to any armor party and let anyone use this. And the belts are cheap. And I'm not worrying about destroying an expensive piece of kit if somebody screws it up somehow. Okay, it's Harbor Freight. Okay, so those are my go-to tools for cutting. Next, we'll talk about forming. Okay, Harbor Freight for the win. Cheap, simple, effective. Okay, great if you're doing large parts, but I'm going to show you my new favorite thing for doing small pieces. This was a cheap griddle that I got from Goodwill. $10, $15. Okay. The setting that I'm going on, this only has like 0, 1, and 2. There's nothing else. And for whatever reason, it really likes to slip. If you get to 2.5, it'll slip its way down to 3. And so I like to keep this at about 2 1/3. Once I slipped any bit beyond that, then it would start to get really tacky, and you can see residue of the plastic because it actually stuck to the griddle. Okay. Stank, probably pretty bad. I was wearing a respirator. Use your PPE, but I've learned that I have to keep it somewhere just a little bit beyond 2, but no further. Okay. And obviously, this plate will never touch a real pancake or food ever again. From there, I'm open if anybody online wants to ask a question. Otherwise, I'll probably move over to talk about blasters and some general thoughts on that. So I'll give you guys a minute. If anybody wants to post a comment, drop a note, please do. I'll give you a few seconds, and I'm going to grab some water, and I'll be right back. Be right back. Okie dokie, any commentary? No new comments unless I'm missing something. Yeah, I appreciate you guys being on. I hope you're having fun. I hope either you're learning or you're going to share this with folks, with foundlings, and pass along some lessons from a crazy dude that's done a couple of these things and played around and made some mistakes. Okay, and I suppose I'll just hit on that. When I coach robotics, one of the hardest things that a lot of my kids have is they're afraid to fail. Okay. And you get somebody who's working on a stormtrooper kit that they just spent $600 on. They are deathly afraid of screwing that plastic up. And so what I'll say is, if you get an extra piece of ABS, Centra, whatever, screw around with it and fail often. Okay. Get that under your belt and do those passes, do those cuts so that you get comfortable with it and learn through failure. Learn through those times that you post up on your WIP and somebody gives you some commentary and that sort of thing. Okay. It's good. And even for somebody like me I've done a lot of kits, I still have to be willing to listen to other folks and listen to them and be willing to submit myself under their authority. So just if that makes any sense whatsoever. Fail early, fail often, keep your ego in check, have fun, try not to get pissed off when somebody denies your kit, all that kind of stuff. We'll hit a little bit on the flight suits versus scrubs. And the other thing is with safety glasses, okay? If we weren't in the world where everything was being hoarded and overbought and all that kind of stuff because of COVID, first of all, safety equipment, PPE, for the love of God, use it. Eye Pro will save your life, or it'll save your eyes, okay? If you wear glasses, get the OTGs. I don't care if you got to get the big old freaking nasties or you do a face mask, full blown, or you just get OTG ones. Whatever you have to do, do it. Amazon is your friend. I had PRK surgery, but before I had that, I would get the ones, the old shop glasses that would fit over your glasses. Do that, and do that because trust me, I usually get injured on every build. Okay. But I've always protected my eyes. I got scars right here from some hot glue that are pretty darn impressive, but use the PPE, be smart, try not to donate too much to the armor gods in the ways of flesh and blood sacrifices. So, Tubby Tuscan, your question is thoughts on flight suits versus scrubs? Nuanced answer. I'm not a judge, so I'm going to give you my personal thoughts. Okay. When I started with this kit, I started with a full flight suit off the shelf, not Nomex, but similar. Okay. And you got to do all the things. You got to remove the pockets and you got to do the things and stuff that you got to do. Sew things up. You can't have zippers showing, blah, blah, blah. Follow the costume standard. Okay. Because my body shape is not ideal and I'm not a 6 foot, 140 or 180 pound rock hard chiseled pilot, the flight suit is not made for my body. It was a pain in the assets. Okay. And I can't tell you the number of times and number of frustrations I had during the approval process about your flight suit looks too baggy. Okay. And I was tightening things up and doing this and that to the point where literally I was blowing seams because I was trying to make it so tight. And I had to work back and forth with some of the approving folks to show them that I had it as tight as I could. But when I took a squat, like what you'll do when you're hugging or squatting down for a picture with a kid, and I'm like, if I tighten this up anymore, I'm going to pop a seam. The other thing I found out is after I stood up from copying that squat, was it actually pulled up the legs and made it baggy. So when you're doing your approval photos, make it perfect. Don't squat down. Make those things perfect for your approval, but acknowledge that in real life, your costume will move around a little bit. Now, the scrubs. I'm recommending that for my daughter. She's 16, and I know that she has the possibility of growing, up, whichever direction. And so for her, I'm absolutely recommending scrubs. And there are tutorials on the website, much like how I'm wearing a t-shirt on top of the Under Armour here. That's sort of how you do the two-part there. And I love the fact that you can do, I believe, some multi-tone where this part matches your bottom, but then this part, I believe, can be a different color. I love that you can do that for contrast. And so keep that in mind. It's a great thing. What I did is I bought a combat shirt and a pair of combat pants from a vendor where I was able to get the exact same material, top and bottom. And then I make sure that other stuff that's a slightly different material never shows. Okay. They're very, 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 very particular on that if you're going for approval. So be cautious, be smart, follow the rules. Okay. But it really is nice if you got to do a bathroom break and you only have to drop the lower half of your kit instead of the whole bloody thing, there's some benefits there. Okay. I'm looking to see if there are any other comments. Otherwise, I'll kind of drive on to what do you think? Should I talk blasters or should I talk gauntlets? And we'll see if somebody's got an opinion, and we'll see if anybody's actually still alive or if it's just me talking to myself. We can talk blasters or we can talk 3D printed. And okay, I see a little bit for both, but blasters and gauntlets. So we'll hit a little bit of both. I'm a Mandalorian. Weapons are my religion, right? Okay. So, okay, this is one of my kids. This was a gift from Kaz Ryder. And he does absolutely beautiful work. So Kaz, love you, buddy. You do some amazing stuff. Okay, this is my child's. They're doing this as a work in progress. They haven't touched it in months. But the beauty of 3D printing is, of course, you get amazing details. The negative to 3D printing is, see all those print lines, all that stuff, all that's got to go away but you've got to do that without destroying the detail that comes with that. So acknowledge that if you're going to do a 3D print, you will be putting in the time and the effort to make it seamless and get rid of print lines, okay? But that's not saying you can't do it. The E10, okay? 3D printed. I did use XTC 3D on this. I did sand it a lot. Lots and lots of effort into doing this. But, you know, I think it's come out pretty good. And I like it. I like, you know, both the dirt and the weathering and the grime that I put into it. The faux leather wraps, stuff like that. It just makes it my own blaster. And so everybody has their own personal philosophies, and there's some great ways of working on a 3D printed kit that might save you some time, but it's still hours, it's still time. And so that's one thought process. Okay. Here's another. Okay. This was a cheapo $10 blaster from Walmart. And I removed the cylinder. I put in some Sintra parts, gave it some greeblies, and painted it up, leather wrapped it. And this isn't one that I normally carry on me, but I love to hand this to kids because I don't care if Johnny drops this on the floor. If Johnny drops a beautiful resin replica, I'm going to have problems, but I can hand this to any kid and not give a rip if this gets dropped or dinged or anything like that. So it is kind of nice to have a couple of go-tos that you can give to anybody and let them handle them. Let's check messages, see if anybody's chewing me out. Okay, so carrying on. Okay, some of you might have seen this blaster. Absolutely love it. Okay, Knights of the Old Republic. I will remember the vendor later. I'm drawing a blank, but I did get this from Etsy and absolutely adore this blaster. Okay, and so there are great vendors out there. Feel free to check them out. I will warn you on helmets. There are some vendors you want to stay away from. Check with the app team, check with your Rousselors, stuff like that, okay? And so there you go. This is a absolute beauty, but I will tell you probably 100 hours or so, off and on, you know, after work, just a little bit here, a little bit there. I found that cylinders are an absolute pain in the butt. So I would take a razor blade or a utility knife blade and scrape along the high points and get it down. And so just know that if you're going this route, it will take time. I'm disappointed because some of the real beautiful details on the inside got washed out with the XTC 3D. And so kind of a bummer. Maybe I could get better, do another version, but it is the way that it is. So there you go. This is probably one of my favorites. Also, just because this was cheap, relatively easy. This was a cheapo MP40 airsoft, and you know, even moving stock, stuff like that. And I love the fact that most of the original Star Wars guns were World War II surplus, and so this has got a great base. And then what I did is I just added on the cheapo basic Crossman type of air rifle scope, and then a lovely Darth Hair resin single point scope. I got an offset, okay, because Star Wars, rule of cool. Why have one scope when you have two, okay? And offset scopes or non-standard locations is such a swarzy thing that I absolutely love doing this, okay? Rob, you're absolutely right. Files, I just bought some. I'm just starting to play with files more. I was watching your video yesterday when you were working on the Battle Droid, and so I will be using files more, still learning, okay? But this was fun. This was my first experience with trying to do the whole metallized, thing like what you see on the Death Troopers, the heat effect and that sort of thing. And so there you go. A lot of fun, different colors, different tones of rub and buff or dry brushing. I love how the gold kind of pops in there, gives it a pop. A lot of silver rub and buff, silver paint markers, dry brushing. And if you don't like what you're doing, is repaint it. Fail forward, okay? Repaint it, do what you got to do until you get to where you love it. So yeah, Nightworks, you can absolutely, trademark that from Bill, Star Wars Rule of Cool. Why have one scope when you can have two, okay? I mean, just look at it. There are tons of blasters out there where they just add scopes and scopes. And even if the scopes are so atrociously non-functional in the real world, they love it. And so it Sworsies it. And you can take a basic off-the-shelf $20 airsoft, okay, $15, I don't know, 25 for 20 or so for the resin scope, another 20 some dollars in hardware to put it on. And so I don't think I probably have more than 50 or 60 bucks invested in this, maybe a little bit more. But this is completely mine. And even if a kid drops it, I'm not going to shed too many tears as compared to if, like, I've seen resin E11s, stormtroopers drop them, and some of the resin add-on pieces and just watch it shatter. And there's just nothing more heart-wrenching than watching something like that get destroyed. Okay? So I will talk briefly about the elephant in the room. Okay? Nerf. People love Nerf. Why? Because you probably got 100 of them around. You can find them at Goodwill, any thrift store, blah, blah, blah. The problem is that Nerf has all of these wonderful little things on here that are so Nerf that anybody can recognize it and spot it a mile away. So be warned, if you want to go down this road, there are threads, there are posts, there are topics of discussion for how to make this approvable. Read them and do your research. And I would implore you then to buy a airsoft World War II era gun and do it, because you'll get it done so much easier, so much faster. That as cool and fun as you think this is, only embark upon this if you want a quarantine project to suck up every waking hour of your life until you're done and to get it approvable, or just order that airsoft of something like an STG-44, MP40, name your E11, anything like that. My preference is real world stuff, not Nerf, because the Nerf stuff is so overdone that it's just, I've got other things I'd rather do with my life. Your mileage may vary, but I see a lot of comments here. The amount of effort to de-nerfize something to make it approvable is not worth it, in my humble opinion. Okay. That said, I do have a big ass Vulcan around here. We might do something like that just for a display, like for kids to screw around with, but I'm not going to try to get it approved. And I acknowledge the fact that, again, that might be a quarantine project, but Nerf, get an airsoft. Okay. Mental note on the airsoft: rip out its guts. Okay. No bangity, bangity, bangity. No shooty, shooty. I don't care if it's Nerf. I don't care if it's a dart gun. I don't care if it's airsoft, whatever. No bangity, bangity, bangity. No shooty, shooty. They won't approve it. Cons don't like it. Don't do it. Make it so that it doesn't shoot. No projectiles. Okay. On to gauntlets. Okay. I have a set of April Storm gauntlets that I've heavily modified and added stuff. This is still very much of a rework in progress. I've got new bling that I've added. And so I'll see if I can get these to turn on. If I can find the switch. Okay. I love bling. I love the fact that you can do things to make your gauntlets unique. Okay. This is still very ugly on the inside. It's very much work in progress. Okay. I've got to clean up the wiring and make it so that it all fits in there. But these are my April Storm gauntlets. and my forearms weren't normal, so we did a test run, and I had to modify them a little bit because I've got more meat in the back, and so we just had to play with it. So just be prepared for that. But it's fun. Keep an eye out at like your Dollar Trees or your Dollar Generals or whatever, and see like what kind of at holiday times they'll have LED kits for different stuff that are battery powered things. And so that's what I've done here is I pop those in just because I like having the lights, and I love this EL thing, electroluminescent. And I love just that look. Like if you look at Star Wars: The Old Republic, I believe his name is Nico Okar. He had some of that stuff, and I just love that look of that bling. Rule of cool. It doesn't have to have a function. It just has to look cool. Kids love this, and you do a nighttime troop or an outdoors troop where it's not great lighting. The folks that have a little bit of EL or LED bling get a little bit more love, or just I think they look cooler. And from a photographer's perspective, I like anything like that that can attract your eye. Okay, so I'm going to show you two different gaunts and two different attachment methods. This one, this April Storm, has a design for you to put a bicycle spoke through it to hold it in place. On my other gaunt, this part broke on me, so I had to do rare earth magnets. Okay, so there you go. All right. Let me turn off the batteries. Okay, so I love with the bling, you can do other things. So I 3D print off some Greeblies. I put XTC 3D on it just to give it visual distinction. That's the whole point of a Greebly, okay? This was part of a calculator, but I simply cut it down and put it on there, and I actually took it apart to its component pieces and painted each button individually instead of trying to mask it and paint it all together as a combined piece. So that's just how I added that. Tubby, the thing is on bling, don't do it initially, okay? Your kit will always be a work in progress, and you can always add bling later. Literally, this is something we teach our kids in robotics. First robotics is don't ever put a light or a blinky thing or some type of bling on your robot until it actually does what it's supposed to do, okay? Then you add the bling. So just keep that in mind. Get your kit approved or get it close to approval, and then consider adding the blinky stuff unless you're really, really good at it. Let me grab the other gauntlet. Okay. So this one, some mixture of 3D printed, okay, mixture of found items. Rob, you're absolutely right. Keep it simple, okay? I absolutely love the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Do it, get it approved, and then have some fun blinging it up later, okay? That's literally what I've been doing, okay? So on this, I do have the pin going through here that was a bicycle spoke, and that's what gives me the hinge. I have some very strong magnets on this. There we are. Okay. Rare earth magnets for the win. I used what I had. They're held in place with what's the stuff called? Two-part. You get it from the auto parts stores. I'm drawing a blank. It's black and gray. You break off a chunk, you mix it together, and somebody of you is going to remember it and post on it before I remember what it's called. Epoxy putty. There's a specific brand name, but at any rate, when you put that on there, the important thing is I put like a tag board or something like that thin in between there. Getting your polarity is critical. And then I left a little something that I didn't care if it got destroyed when it goes, JB Weld, thank you, Rob. I knew you'd remember it. Okay. So when I'm JB welding this, I left something in between this so that when I put it together, that tag board sat in the middle of this so that the JB weld on both sides wouldn't glue, form itself together. That would be really bad juju, and I'd be really hacked off at destroying a good pair of gaunts. Okay. So there you go. I'll show you these little blinkies. These came from a cheapo set of gloves. And this set of gloves was super duper cheap. Found it on Amazon. And I just cut it apart, and it had fiber optic stuff going through it. And I simply cut the fiber optic or the little tube and cut that. It was just a little plastic tube, and I cut it right above the LED, popped it in there, and I love the fact that I get a little bit of changing and blinky lights, because who doesn't love a little bit of bling? Do that afterwards, after you're approved. Okay? So gaunts. Again, use your files, use your blades to scrape across to cut down the high points on your PL, like if you're doing PLA. If I have my druthers in the future, I'm going to maybe try to go to resin or something else. But if you're doing PLA, just know you're going to spend a lot of time getting those print lines out of there. So there you go. There's my April Storm gaunts. Absolutely love them. But it took a little bit of work. Okay. So there you are. Hangers in place of spokes, whatever works for you, okay? But there you go. Luckily for me, I don't even have to clamp it on. Sometimes I can squeeze through, but I think when I'm wearing the full flight suit and gloves and all that type of thing, I do have to clamp it. And I've had the armor bites on the inside when those magnets grab skin. I'm open for other topics. Otherwise, I'm going to grab a quick drink of water, and somebody post up a topic of something you want to talk about or ask a question. I'll be right back. Any questions from the masses? Or Rob, any common thing that you see that people have issues with? Okay, weathering flight suits and scrubs. Okay, let me grab a piece of soft goods here and I'll kind of show you. All right, we'll start from the simplest and kind of go from there. All right, night work. You're working on weathering scrubs, flight suits, that sort of thing. Tea staining and coffee staining for the win. I left this inside of a big pot for 2 days with coffee, and this used to be white. Okay, so tea staining is absolutely fantastic. I can highly recommend that. I use old coffee, brewed up extra thick. All right. On to your soft goods. So I'm doing a desert, sando, and there, I hope this is showing through just how pristine that little part is. Okay. And then you go to the outsides, and this is very much dirtier and darker. I have used a combination of paints. Here's a great one. If you can find this, this is Design Master Floral Paint. Anybody that's done an Indoor Rebel Trooper knows about Design Master. And it's a floral paint for working on like silk flowers and painting them up. And it doesn't leave a crunchiness the way that you'll get with an enamel. And so these type of paints are fantastic. I believe I get them at Michael's, maybe Joann's or Hobby Lobby. Call around, find them online if you can. But I can heartily recommend any type of floral spray paint, just because it's not going to stick the way enamel will. From there, I probably got 4 or 5 different colors of paint that I get at Menards. And so this is my cape. and I laid it out and I just dusted it with 4 or 5 different colors, sometimes black, sometimes other things. And I just hit it to give it layer upon layer upon layer. Weathering is about layers, and it's about whatever colors palette is going to be realistic for what you're doing. A little side thought here. I'm going to show you the weathering on my cape. This was done with a hammer and here a piece of concrete block. Okay, if not this one, the other one that I've got here, and there are still literally pieces of this fabric stuck to it. Okay, from me hammering onto that. And this is another part of weathering, is distressing. And something that people will do wrong when they're distressing is they make it too uniform. They just snip, 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 and call that good. Okay. All right. So your question is, you got gray scrubs and a black vest. How would you do weathering a dark color? What type of weathering do you want? Do you want mud splatters or do you want oil stains? That's the type of questions you have to ask yourself. Okay. Believe it or not, if you want like a little bit of rust stain or something like that, orange paint does wonders for that. And so what you want for weathering on black, I believe, Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I would go with brighter colors of the brown palette in order to offset and pop against the black and the gray scrubs. Okay. And the other thing is maybe like take a look at people that work in the auto repair industry, or somebody at Jiffy Lube or something like that, and look at their outfits and look at the oil stains and the grease stains. And quite honestly, in the past on my Tuscan, I literally used dirty oil that I would rub on that just to give it some of that real texture and stuff like that. But it's always about contrast, and contrast within reason. Okay, so I might look around, or maybe later I'll try to find some dark fabric and put some paint on there. But grays and tans, the dark parts, you hit it with something lighter and to make it pop. Okay, and again, kind of blend it in. You don't want just pure globs per se, but you like it to do that. So what I will do is I'll get the fabric really, really wet. And here's the other thing that I'm going to show you. As far as weathering, I'll kind of move the camera. Over the last couple of years, I've built together a small supply of acrylic paint is my friend, and I love acrylic paint for weathering. And what I love about acrylics is it's water soluble. Okay. And so you can put it on thick, and if it doesn't look good, you can wash it down. You can wet it down. And so just you can spend $5 at 50 cents a bottle at Walmart, and you can walk home with, do the math. What is that? $5, 10 different bottles of different types of paint, and just play with that and get it wet. And then maybe what you do is you take your sleeve and you dip it into the water and you let it soak up, and with some of that fabric or some of that, the pigment of the paint, and watch it as it soaks up. Okay. And if you don't like it, stick it in the sink, hose it down. Okay. And just add those layers and layers, and maybe a little thicker here and a little thinner there. But the thing is that your weathering on your soft goods has to be consistent with the rest of your armor. So in my case, I've got mud splatters and dried dirt and grime all off. So Rob, thanks for being on. But the weathering has to be consistent. So if you're doing, as you paint the armor, just know whatever you do on that armor has to, correspond with what's on your soft goods. Okay. I hope that helps. And I'll kind of show you my paints I've been gathering over the last couple of years. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll get the fabric wet. I'll put it on a stick outside or on a hanger, and then I'll just hit it with just different places and different colors. And maybe it's like a bright reddish tan, reddish brown, and then maybe hit that with a little bit of gray and model it together. But it's a dynamic, organic process, and it just takes time and experimentation and the willingness to fail. Okay. From there, I'll kind of show you other soft goods. Virtually all of this was done with acrylic paints. Okay. I also like to scratch this stuff up, the leather. There's nothing worse than brand new, fresh leather without a little bit of distressing. So hit it with a rock and scrape it along there, hit it with sandpaper and make your leather distressed. As painful as it is to get a beautiful new leather belt from a great seamstress, Mel Matson, Ciota run, but then you get it and then you ding it up and you grunge it up and you make it so that it looks used and abused, okay? And so I hit this in, I tried to think of logical places where maybe I would have sat down or brushed up against something muddy. And then you hit it into the crevices and the creases and the lines where your stitches are and stuff like that. Layer upon layer upon layer, and then put it aside and then go back and work on it a little bit later. Here's another Billism. There's nothing that I hate worse than seeing a good set of pouches and have them be flat or flaccid and not have something in them. If you're going to have pouches, put something in them to make them solid, even if you're putting in cardboard or something like that. I made some extra pieces, parts, easier things for working on brigades. But what it does do is it fills this in beautifully so that if I brush up against something or this has been sitting in my kit, my pouch still looks solid. There's nothing worse than seeing a kit with your pouches all scrunched together, all right? Found pieces. These were just print cartridges that I put together and mucked them up, okay? And a little bit of rub and buff, a little bit of silver paint pen, and that sort of thing. And so, misted this with a spray paint, okay? Altoids can with a piece of Centra, painted that up, bada bing, little med kit, okay? But that stuff serves a purpose in keeping the pouch together, all right? Layer upon layer upon layer, okay, in logical places. I'll kind of tell you, if you think about a clone trooper, I saw this all the time. The clone troopers have a lot of indents recessed into parts of their kit. And people would put the dirt and the grime on the front part of it, but not on the recessed part. And that's actually the opposite. So what I would do with the acrylics is I'd water them down with either water or with Windex, with ammonia, and spray that on there. And the Windex would evaporate, leaving behind the paint. And then I'd hit it with a wet piece of Kleenex or tissue paper and then model that off. I never use paper towels myself because paper towels have a pattern to it, and that pattern can still get into the weathering. So I love toilet paper, worth its weight in gold now, so maybe use something else, or use a little piece of sponge that's organic. But I would pull that off of the high places like I was the Mandalorian, and think about when he fought the Mudhorn. And he's mucked up to all hell and back, okay? And he's got that junk all over him. But a little bit later on, you can tell maybe he took a rag and wiped down his kit. So it's clean on the high points, but there's still a little bit of mud and gunk in the lower places. That's the difference between improper weathering and proper weathering, is you still want that muck and that grime into the indents, the recesses, and stuff like that. So I've been talking for almost an hour. I'm still game for any other questions. I tried to hit the gamut of conversations of different things. And so I want this to be interactive. If somebody else has got a question, pop in there. And while you're typing that up, I'll kind of show you the helmet, or we'll talk a little bit about, since we're on weathering, what do I use for masking fluid? I've heard people use mustard. I've never used mustard. I do like to use toothpaste. I actually like toothpaste more than doing, I used to use like this more expensive masking fluid. Toothpaste is dirt cheap. You can get it everywhere in theory, unless people start hoarding that too. Okay. And I put it on there. And what I loved about the toothpaste is as long as I clean up my kit within a couple days afterwards, it brushes off real easily. So what I do is I take a green scrubby, throw this under the sink, and I just start hitting it with the green scrubby and push it back and get all that off. And so that's how I got the dings and the nicks and the multiple layers within this. Okay. So that's the way I do it. Your mileage may vary. Okay. But that's what's worked for me is I hit this stuff with hammered paint first. Okay. Hammered. I like the texture. And so then I hit that. And then once that all cures, then I hit it with silver or aluminum. And then after the aluminum goes on, that's when I start putting the masking fluid everywhere. And I don't like to use a standardized thing to put it on. I prefer more of like a sponge or something like a ripped off hunk of sponge because it's organic. Again, I hate to use something, even something that's standard issue. So I'll get this wet. I'll pull off a hunk of sponge. I'll put the toothpaste on there and then I'll dab it on there because it's organic. Okay. And then when it's all said and done, I get the scrubby end and then I'll get this wet and I'll pull it off and I'll scrape it and scratch it while I'm doing it. And that's how you get some of those fun, more organic looking scrapes and cuts through that. And again, I don't use paper towels when I'm blotting things off because the last thing I want to do is have that bounty or that Charmin pattern print into my armor. And if you look at it up close, you'll sometimes see it. So that's a Billism. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'd want to know about if I was a new person. If I was a foundling. Research. I've got a folder on my laptop that has probably 200 photos that I've copied and saved from the various message boards, forums, and work in progress threads. And what I will do is I will copy that, even if I like only one part of that, and maybe I use the snipping tool. If you're on a Windows platform, you use a snipping tool, and I'll take that and I'll put a little circle around that or put an arrow at it and say, that's the part that I like. And then you build that book of reference of the things that will help you out or the things that will inspire you. There are some people out there with kits that are infinitely better than mine. I'm going to do a shout out to Bill Stellan, and he's one of those guys. His kit I just fell in love with, and I tried to apply aspects of that into my own kit. And there are other people with just these amazing kits, and I'll just copy parts of that and use and learn from that to how to build my kit. Before you buy, ask a question. If you're curious about a vendor, ask the question, especially of a Russell or somebody like that, especially if you're shopping on eBay or Etsy. There are some great vendors out there. There are some not so great vendors, and there are some recasters out there. I'm not going to go deep down that rabbit hole, but I'm of the camp that I will only buy from quality approved vendors. I know several personally. Shout out to Darth Hare and Mon Cal that I know personally from my time in Colorado, and I've been to their shops probably dozens, if not hundreds of times. Maybe less with Cal, but Jeff's at Darth Hare's, I've been there more times than I can count. And I know how much effort the good vendors put into making their stuff. And so I will buy from them. And so I'm very, very cautious about who I buy my pieces parts from. And I'm not getting any kickback from them. I'm just telling you people that I know personally, and I know them as human beings, and I know them outside of here. And so, but there are other great vendors. But do the research on every message board, whether you're on Mandalorian costuming or the Mando Mercs or whatever. There are threads out there that are like, here are approved vendors, and then they might have a list of recast vendors. Pay attention to that. Don't buy from somebody that's stealing from other good artists, and don't be a jerk, right? So take that for what you will. I'd comment on anything else if anybody's got anything. Otherwise, we're right at 1 hour, and I'm just gonna say, in these interesting times, let's be as good a human being as we possibly can be. Treat your neighbors good. Do something right. Don't hoard. Don't be a jerk, and love on folks. Okay. Alexander, thanks for popping up. Okay. How do you know if there are templates or patterns for soft goods available? I do believe that there are templates available on the Mando Mercs forums, and I can probably look at that later. And I'm sure that there are threads. The other thing that I would say is if you're working on your vest, and I'm no seamstress, okay? Like if anything has almost caused divorce proceedings in my family, would have been making soft goods for costumes, in particular the comma on the Shore Trooper. So I'll tell you, soft goods have been a bane of my costuming existence, okay? With the vest, when my wife made my vest, we took an old t-shirt and cut it apart, okay? And we used that, and it was a larger t-shirt, and we used that as the basis for the pattern for the vest. I'm just getting a message, so let's see if it's somebody here. Yeah, it's cool. So vests. Cut up a shirt, cut up something that you don't mind destroying, and that's how you can eventually get to this. For us, sleeves are a pain in the posterior, so I have a sleeveless vest. Okay, we just went straight up and around there, did that. I've got Velcro on the shoulder, and bada bing, bada bang, Bob's your uncle. Okay, that's what worked for me. If you trade or trade services or whatever, find a seamstress, somebody in your clan, buy them dinner, whatever it takes, get delivery sent to them. Be cautious when you're doing soft goods stuff, especially if you are working with a vendor, in communicating with them. So like if you're doing your measurements and you're talking to them and you're like, this is it when it's tight. Okay, I want to have breathing room. Okay. Communicate that with your vendor, because otherwise, or your seamstress, because otherwise, especially if you're not going there, you're trying to do the social distancing thing. Communicate, because otherwise, if they do it to the centimeter or to the millimeter of what you gave them, and you put it on and you move your arms or you move your back and you pop a seam and the whole thing falls apart. Okay, and that sucks. And I've had that because I've got some interesting calves. And there was a pain in the butt time, where I worked with my seamstress back and forth, just doing the simple gaiters for my indoor trooper. So communication is critical, and making sure that you do that right. As far as I know for a fact on soft goods for scrubs, there are definitely templates out there. And the other thing I'm going to beg everybody watching, and if you're talking to a foundling, here is the most underutilized part on any message board, whether you're talking the Mandalorian mercs or any 501st attachment or the Mando official forums. For the love of God, use the search feature. There is nothing more frustrating than being part of an online community and you give an answer to somebody and you put in a really well thought answer and you answer that person and you put that in there, and the next day some noob that just joined the forums asked the exact same bloody question, when if they just would have searched, they would have found that answer and you wouldn't have to search it yourself, try to be a nice guy, and either link them to that or copy and paste it. So for the love of God, use the search feature. And so go onto the Mando Mercs website or, forums or Mandalorian costuming or whatever, and just search the word scrubs or template or pattern and pull up a tab and do a tab for each of those. And you're going to start seeing things that will pop up. That way you're not having to recreate the wheel because somebody else has already talked to about that. I hope that answers the question. I can guarantee you that when it comes time to doing the scrubs for my daughter's kit, I'm going to search scrubs and I'm going to find those templates and we're going to do those things. And then we're going to double check and say, okay, is this color allowed to be different from this color? But I think this color has to match the pants color. Okay, so pay attention to that, and be smart. Okay, I'm open for any other questions because I'm starting to run out of thought process of stuff that I haven't talked about. So feel free to ask any questions at all. Okay, I'll just look at other things that I haven't gone through. Here's an example of my plates for my legacy build. Okay, and I guarantee you there are legacy templates if you search for them on the forums. And so these are legacy. This is a custom set that my son designed in CAD, and we laser cut out the cardboard templates because we did this in a pattern to match my Stalker and his Soul Seeker helmet. And so this is what I've been working on the last few days. And so there you go. I label each part. Usually I'll label it on the front. And then right before I spray paint the front, I put the label on the back. Okay. The way that I do things, I don't care if it's got spider webbing. I don't care if it's got other junk like that, because the way that I'm going to weather this, I want my paint job to get mucked up. Your mileage may vary. You can do what you want. You want to do a pristine kit, that's your business. Okay. This is just how I've been doing mine. Okay. So these are the parts right here that are going to fit underneath my chest part. And that's drying and curing out in the garage right now. So I don't have that part. But there you go. That's part of my legacy plate structure. So there's that. I'll show you gloves. Okay. Here's the thing about gloves. See that there label? Brand marker, whatever you want to call it. You got to cover that. Okay. So I took a TK hand plate that I had lying around, and then I did the snow trooper thing where I drilled a couple holes in there, and then I sewed it on physically onto the glove, because I've tried it and I've done it where on your gloves you've got the elastic going around through the palm of your hand. I did that initially, didn't like it so much, and so I did this, and I know that hand plate is never going to come off. I have watched events, whether it's in parades and you're given high fives, you're at that St. Patty's Day parade and you're given high fives, and some schmuck grabs your hand plate and whisks it off of your hand, and there goes, $20 worth of replacement plastic. Okay. And so I love doing this little snow trooper thing. And if you go onto Blizzard Force, you'll see them where the snow troopers did that. And so I just love that little homage to a kit that I did way back in 2008 or something like that. And again, weathering has to match the armor. So I could probably even weather up the gloves a little bit better, but there's definitely some muckage going on there. So I'll talk in a minute about different places to get things, and then maybe I'll pop on some links. Okay, here's a new helmet, newer vendor. This is called a Soul Seeker. I got this for my son. This was his Christmas present. Great helmet. They do things in waves. He mucked that part up when he was doing that because we didn't have one of the better tools. So we'll see how we fix that. No idea, but that'll be part of the fun. So this is Soul Seeker number 7. Gotta love that. Beautiful helmet. And I can't wait for Minox to come out with the large fat head recon, because that's what I will do for my snow kit when I do that. Some companies that I like to support that I've always used, one is called Sportsman's Guide. Just Google up sportsmansguide.com, I do believe it is. And then just start looking for leather pouch, okay? And you'll start to see stuff. And what I absolutely loved is in some of the recent Mandalorian episodes, I saw parts that I would swear directly from the Sportsman's Guide, including either the Yugo or the Mauser pouches that are really, really common throughout the Mandalorian mercs. Saw those on there, and I'll show you this other set of leather suspenders. I believe it was Zero, the droid, that had this suspender. And I got that because I had a problem with my belt and stuff shifting around. And so I put a set of suspenders on there, freaking solved every problem that I had with that midsection and stuff moving around. So Sportsman's Guide is awesome. Military surplus stuff is great, especially in leather. Leather is better than canvas. Canvas is better than modern tactical. I try to avoid the modern tactical stuff like the plague. Your mileage may vary, but I'm doing a Western-themed gunslinger. You don't see tactical out there in the desert, okay? You see mucked up leather, canvas, stuff like that. That's a billism. Your mileage may vary, okay? So here you go. This was the part. This is exactly what Zero has. You'll see these clips on him, and I completely geeked out when I saw this on him because I'm like, I've got that at home. All right. And so this was phenomenal for me. Tubby, I will ask that question because I'll talk about the big old Mando Brigade. Order these right now, sportsmansguide.com. Find this. This harness changed my world as a bigger dude. All right. Guess what? You see this schmog? Nay, nay, throw it out, most breath. Don't use it for your Mando. The Mandos are absolutely against schmogs anymore. Okay. So as much as you love it, you look at the new standards. This is a nay, nay. Okay. In particular, things that they don't like, tassels. Okay. So you picture Edna mode, no capes. Well, this is no tassels. Tassels equals bad. Same thing goes with all that patterning. They will not approve this. So sorry. Okay. Here was another Sportsman's Guide purchase. This is more of a modern fabric, but I distressed the ever-living hell out of this. This is a 40 millimeter belt. Okay, so if you go on to sportsmansguide.com and you look up 40 millimeter bandolier, you'll probably find this. And I went to a buddy in my robotics program and I said, hey, I want you to make me a ammo thing that's 40 millimeters that looks like a 40 Mike grenade, just like what we used in the Army, but modify it a little bit. So we put 3 different little power celly type dudes. And so I claim that those are my power cells for my DE10s. Okay. And it was a really quick design job and bada bing. And so I got some of that. I do use a little bit of Velcro, hook side Velcro on the back to kind of hold it in place. All right. So let's talk about bigger dudes. As a bigger guy, okay, here you go. I got a gut. I've worked a desk job for the last 15 years, and I'm 100 pounds heavier than I was when I came off deployment in 2005. It is what it is, and it sucks, but it is where I'm at. I found for myself, with my body shape, this was an epic pain in the posterior. Legacy has changed my life. I love this, but the amount of effort that I've had to do back and forthing with the approval staff, the Rousselors, this is great. In my humble opinion, if you're a skinny git, if you have a proper body shape, go this route, okay? But if you take your plates off, okay, if they're on Velcro and you put them back together, and you don't do it quite right, somebody's going to comment. I actually put these on a little wonky just to mess up the OCD people, just to, tweak parts of their brain pan, all right? And I've been doing work on it, okay? And so I pulled them off. And so if I were to go out and do a troop, which of course I'm not in the next couple months, I would spend a lot of effort to get these put on perfectly and get all the spacing right, okay? So I'll show you a little bit more about legacy. For those that don't know, these parts here are called trauma plates. And trauma plates are just extra parts of armor that you put on top so that takes the hit as opposed to your armor underneath, because not everybody's got Beskar, okay? So I need to take that call. I will be back in like 30 seconds. Post up any more questions, and then I'll talk a little bit more about legacy when I get back. All righty, I'm back. Let's see, any other questions? Okay, that's my son who works at a grocery store, and he's a bagger at the local store. He just got back and said that at least here in Indiana, folks must be stocked up because it looked like normal grocery runs today instead of the crazy stockpiling. And while the ground beef was gone, other meats were finally starting to hit the shelves again. So let's hope that we're past some of the insanely crazy, hectic panic buying that people have been doing. So, legacy. What I adore about legacy is that I have one solid chest piece on here. And when I put the iron heart on and I'm going to put on that the trauma plates and stuff like that to give it that part, I never have to worry about it getting off kilter. So this to me is changing my life. And I'm going to give huge props out to my son. So we had cut out the standard issue legacy stuff. And I felt that the angles on it didn't match my helmet so much. And my son is 17. He's at a local career center, and he's playing around with some fun techie tools. So I challenged him to modify a set of legacy armor and do it with angles. And we actually ran the math and did some stuff to make it angles that better closely match the Stalker helmet and his Soul Seeker. And so that's where we came up with this angle. And this angle is actually now the same on every single part of chest and ab armor, the shoulder, my bicep armor. I'm doing hip armor and the back armor. And so it's all going to have the exact same angle. And so that's something we did. We laser cut out the templates. I'm really, really proud of them. And we had a mad crazy scramble do it before school got canceled. So let me show you the back armor that I have to show you what legacy can look like. Okay. And there you go. So if you're a bigger guy, I can heartily recommend this. I love it so much more. And, this is not chest armor, but you can get the idea. The main thing is you still got to give it some curvage. Okay. Don't just use straight flat pieces. Heat gun it up or put it on, like what I do on the griddle, and to get a little bit of curvage. Okay. So that's legacy. So barring any other questions, I only see two people on, so I'm going to sign off. I wish you guys the best, and keep on keeping on. Maybe I'll pop on tomorrow after work, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'll see if I can do a live stream. So take care, everybody. Be safe, be smart, and, this is the way.